Right, so our project is called The Sound of the North, and our project as a whole is about music in the Northeast. So before we start, we're going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Jacob, I'm a huge fan of music, which is why I came up with the idea to pursue this for a project. I'm a local lad from Seaham, so the Northeast is my home, so doing a project based on music in the area is perfect for me.
I'm Jude, I'm from Seaham. I've always kind of had music as a big part of my life. I like a lot of ranges of music, anything from MF Doom, Nirvana, AC/DC, Red Hot Chili Peppers, stuff like that. So I thought music, like a project on music would be something that I'd be quite well suited for, and that's why I'm on this project.
And I'm Jack. If you couldn't tell, I'm arguably the most enthusiastic about music here. I'm from Sunderland, born and bred. I have a massive passion for music. I'm starting up a band. I practice drums and vocals, and it was my passion for music that made us excited to do this. And when I heard what Jacob presented to me, I was happy to jump on board.
My name's Caitlin. I make edits in my free time, so I'm more of the person who will be editing the main video. And since I edit, I have a lot of experience with like working with audio and like different types of music. So because of that, I have a lot of different like style when it comes to like listening in general.
So what we're going to highlight in this project is the importance of music in relation to the culture and funding of the Northeast, and how its societal impact has and will continue to make a significant imprint of the Northeast. So to introduce, we'll be talking about the evolution of music in the Northeast and how it has changed through recent decades. So we will explain how the Northeast has contributed musically to British and global culture, as well as pointing out some of the biggest artists and bands to make their start in the Northeast.
So we also want to talk about kind of the money that's been put into and brought out of music. So kind of the investment that's been put into fostering new musical talent in the area, and just making sure people have the opportunities to make their name. We'll also talk about the money that music has made for the area in terms of kind of tourism and live events, stuff like that, how that's brought people in to spend money on local businesses, and how it's generated money for local councils and authorities so that they can spend that and improve in the area as a whole, which obviously would improve people's lives in the Northeast.
To follow on from this, we're going to talk about some of the big musical names from the Northeast, who not many people actually realise that they could live like an hour or so away from here, and they've made their name by creating music, which obviously inspires us to like continue with the continue as doing what we do, as it'll help us grow as creators.
And then after this, we'll plan to talk about and interview some local bands in the area. This will highlight up and coming new talent, show what the Northeast is capable of producing musically. It'll also give us insight into the culture that it provides for the youth of the Northeast, local venues, stuff for kids to do on the holidays, stuff like that. And obviously it will hopefully kind of get rid of the stigma around the area that you may think of when you think of the Northeast, due to things such as like the north-south divide and stuff like that.
So yeah, that's about it. Is there any questions you've got about the project?
Fab. No, it's great. So it's like, I really like the concept, because obviously I'm interested generally in music, and I'm not from here originally, so I'm still kind of getting to know the area. I'm also Sunderland actually, so because I live sort of like Gateshead, Newcastle way. So it's something that I'm personally interested in. So it's a cool concept. I guess. Where else have the research? Have you looked into like venues and?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's more my type of thing,
Yeah.
because in my free time I go to quite a lot of gigs. I've done personal research into Downcast Studios and Gateshead.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know it. The Independent in the city centre, also the Bunker. I know quite a few people who work there. And obviously, I won't lie and say that I know everything about it, but I do know enough about these venues to talk about it and present it in our video.
Okay, cool. Yeah, fair.
Who's the talent? Who's going to be presenting all of this?
Do you mean like the voiceover?
Yeah. Is it
It's
just
going to be a
voiceover?
mixture. Well, no,
Oh,
it's a voiceover with like clips and like B-roll footage of like bands playing and stuff. I'm guessing it'll be a mix of all of us.
Right.
So obviously we have our different sections in this video and we've presented them accordingly. Once it gets to each part of the video, obviously we'll summarise what we've just said and go to our like according sections, you know what I mean?
So I know that there's a few groups who are doing stuff on music. So in terms of copyright, how are you going to get around any kind of copyright clearances?
Well, we haven't. This is the thing. So we need footage from actual artists because in our video we're going to talk about some of them. So for copyright clearance, we haven't like thought much about that yet. But in terms of the actual bands who we're going to interview, we will like probably give them the contributors form so they can sign that, and that will give us permission.
I mean, a lot of it, I don't think. So, say when we're talking about kind of bigger artists, we probably won't use too much of their music. Like, if we are going to use it, we'll try to use whatever we can with their use. But say for like B-roll footage, we've kind of got an idea where it's going to be like, we might show a video from one of their concerts, but there won't be any sound on it, and it'll be us talking over it. So it could just be footage that's taken from social media or something like that, and obviously we'd have to use it. But I think for the most part, any music that is used, it'll be from local bands who will get the kind of copyright permission from.
I just like to add on to that, that obviously I've taken some B-roll footage myself personally, going at these gigs, and obviously I've set up an interview with an actual band in the Northeast. Obviously I've explained the idea to them and what could come about for us and them, and I've been given full permission by 3 of the bands which I covered in my initial pitch to use their footage, and obviously to use the footage of me talking to them and stuff like that. So when it comes to music, if we're using local bands, we've got full clearance on that, we're able to do that.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
Have you thought about how you're going to film it?
Well, so what we want to do is we want to have some actual shots like in the city of us talking, but the majority of the filming, like the majority of the final video, will be just voiceovers of actual footage that we've either taken ourselves or we've taken and got permission for that footage. So it's just going to be a lot of voiceovers, bit of music in the background, stuff like that.
And not only that, I guess it'll kind of be formatted a bit like a documentary, even though that's not necessarily what
It's
we're
kind of
going
like
for.
it's what it is that we're doing is, because the Northeast as a whole, it's not an area of the country that people will look at and think, you know, there's a lot of talent around there. Like, it's a very important area. We want to like show people, not just people who are already from the Northeast, but like people who aren't. Like, this is where we live. This is the talent that is produced where we live. This is why the Northeast shouldn't go unnoticed, because the North as a whole, you know, there's nowhere near as much attention up here as there is down south. And this is something that I care about a lot. I care about the North-South divide, and I think the North just doesn't get enough credit for like what it actually produces in the world. So our video is to help the Northeast like come alive even more, to show people like this music around here is cool. Like,
But in history, as a area in England, in history we have been kind of brushed aside. But a lot of people don't see the North for what it really is. Obviously we're quite an industrial area. You know, Sunderland as a city, I guess its biggest attraction in terms of work is like Nissan. But we have a lot more to offer, and that's what we intend to show. Another thing that I want to point out, I don't know if you've had this in mind, but I know our pitch kind of seems as though for a 3-minute long video it could be a bit too much to cram in. I just want to clarify that the stuff that we've shown you here, we plan to summarise so that it can fit. And I know that might seem easier said than done, but I mean, I'm confident in all of us that we can get it done, you know what I mean? just to clear that up.
Yeah, no, because there is quite a lot of ground that you're going to cover in
Yeah.
that 3-minute video, so that would be, which kind of leads me to my final question, is in terms of like the story, so beginning, middle and end, so how is it going to start and what's the conclusion going to look
So-
like at the end?
This is something that I've thought a lot about. So I want the beginning to talk about, well, the piece that I talked about in the pitch, which was the evolution, like a short summary of how it started and how it like looks now. Second part is we're planning on the bands, the interviews with the bands that Jack is sorting out. The third part, I'm not too sure yet, but we're going to talk about that and we're going to think about what we can include at the
You'll
end.
probably be on
The venues, yeah, the cultural venues, the economic side of it will probably be at the end, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think as well, it doesn't all have to just be section. I think a lot of it can be kind of talk about one thing related to another and then relate back to something else, you know what I mean? It can all kind of flow in between each other.
So it links together your ideas.
Yeah.
But obviously, it'll make more sense as we're doing it, you know what I mean? Kind of what we need to talk about when we need to talk about it. But that, the way we presented it is kind of a rough structure of how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you do seem to have a bit of like a call to action at the end, which is about, you know, there's lots going on up here.
Yeah.
Like even the divide between Sunderland and Newcastle.
Oh,
even,
definitely.
like, you know.
Yeah, there's loads of that. Like obviously you know because you were born and bred here, but
Mhm.
someone like me, like you know, even though I've been here for like 10 years, I don't really know. You know, I don't follow football as much,
Yeah.
and you know, so there's a lot of interest there from someone who lives here now, who's interested in the culture and what's going on here, in terms of like highlighting that as well,
Mhm.
and just really like giving that personal touch,
Mhm.
be like, you know, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Sally's right with like the content, like in terms of, you know, there's quite a lot to cover. So it's like how you really devise that,
Mhm.
and how you like you were saying with ideas, like how if that slips in, it might have to be quite short or
Yeah.
brief.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. A lot of the information will kind of just be, it'll be a small amount
Yeah.
at a time, you know what I mean? So we might talk about, you know, big artists and then say, go move on to the cultural side of it, like how it's coming through now. And then we'll talk about maybe how money being invested into that is going to help produce that. So it will kind of be a thing where it's little bits of information mixed together, you know what I mean?
Yeah, what we have done is like, you know, we got that edit task to do, the
Yeah.
short.
The compliance.
Yes, the compliance edit. Well, the woman in that video, you know, it's quite a short video. She doesn't spend too long talking about the same thing. So like that's what we've took inspiration from, because it's meant to be for social media. You know, you rarely sit there on Instagram, TikTok and scroll and you find this like 10-minute video. A lot of it is just like short form content where there's quite a lot of information crammed into one like 5-minute, 3-minute video.
The last thing I'd like to personally touch on is how our project kind of builds a sense of community for the people in the North East. Because as we've mentioned before, obviously, people do see the North East, at least how I view other people viewing us would be, you know, there's not much going on here. And to a small degree they are right, because we do have a lot of our culture based on one thing, which is usually football. And the Sunderland between, like, the rivalry between Sunderland and Newcastle, for example, it's arguably the biggest in England, you know. But with music, I think that brings a sense of community that you don't really get in many other forms of media. You know, you go to a Sam Fender concert as a Sunderland fan or a Middlesbrough fan or any other team in the region, and even though he's a Geordie, you can still feel that sense of pride for him. Well, technically, but I think you still have that sense of pride for him because he's local to us.
Yeah.
He's from where we're from, and he represents us.
Yeah.
You know, he might not be representing the very exact part of where you're from, but he's still
Yeah, it's back
from your.
yeah.
Well, exactly. So I think it just kind of shows that we can't all be, I guess, unified under one form of media.
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? I think the North East as a whole is like, we divide ourselves so much, but then we're also very close
Yeah.
in the way we do a lot of other things. And I do think a lot of people don't see that, you know what I mean? They'll either see the northeast as all very close knit, or they'll see it as very divided. But in reality, it's a mix of both. You know?
Yeah, so that's it, yeah.
Oh,
That's our
very
pitch.
good.
Great.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It was a great